So my name is Gabriel D Vine. Hey, we're gonna start. We gotta get out of here by 9, so let's move in here. This is my name here, Gabriel D Vine. I'm from Los Angeles. I make appearances on the World Crypto Network on YouTube with a couple of other ne'er-do-wells. And we do panel discussion shows. I have my own show on there called Future Rant. But in my daily life, I'm also an entrepreneur, so I don't do that much content. Occasional interview here and there. I believe my last full interview was with Manfred Karrer, the Austrian founder of the BISC, with a Q, decentralized Bitcoin exchange software. That was a fun interview. So I got into Bitcoin. I'm a musician as my background, and we went to school in Austria, but of all places. I didn't know anything about economics back then. But just from Los Angeles, you know, been a DJ and a producer for many years. Toured around, including in the UK and in the North. And I was doing a little bit of software development, front-end web development. So that's, for those of you who don't know about software development, that's kind of like the what you might call the PowerPoint of software development. You know, for somebody who's like a hardcore Word macro person, you know, it's PowerPoint. Yeah, I'm a front-end web developer, you know, to get by in between gigs and things. And I was in between a couple of contracts in 2013 and saw the news about the run-up during the spring and got completely sucked down the rabbit hole. So that happens to us. I found that year that there was so little content. You know, it was very different back then. And I was really watching some panel discussion shows on World Crypto Network and kind of wanted to chime my voice in. So I wormed my way in, and the rest is history. So I've probably done 50 or 100 shows on there over the years. So I come from a background in the arts, as you know now, and so I'm very fascinated by the cultural side of Bitcoin, the psychology, the sociology. Drama on Bitcoin Twitter has been mentioned, and just what a new innovation suddenly being thrust onto society, what effect that has, and to be involved in it, somewhat, you know, in the center as a pundit. I mean, I'm not a Bitcoin developer. I'm not a genius. You know, if you come up to me and start asking me to explain elliptic curve cryptography or something, I'm going to be like, okay, it's a little outside my purview. But yeah, so that is one of that's sort of my main focus when I do appearances, is not only on the technical aspects, but and talking about how it works, but also sort of fallacies, frauds, rhetoric, ethics, you know, culture. So I was absolutely fascinated by this talk I saw. But first we'll start with the name of my talk, The Cultural Impact of Reserve Internet Sound Money. An Austrian economics view of the societal fallout from mass Bitcoin adoption. So Austrian economics is a school of economics, as mentioned. Karl Menger and Ludwig von Mises are sort of the progenitors of this school. It's extremely oppositional to the mainstream of economics of today that is espoused by nation states and institutions in the West. I checked out this talk. I think I didn't catch it until 2015, but this fellow, Jörg Guido Hülsmann, he's a German economist who specializes in Austrian economics. Of course, the Mises Institute is, you know, an Austrian economics institution. He's a senior fellow there. I think he's been a professor before, but he's also an author. He's authored several books about different economics issues. He made this great talk on YouTube. I highly recommend to check it out. So take a picture or write down the name. It's called The Cultural Consequences of Fiat Money. So we were talking about actually fiat currency, right? This is the cultural consequences of essentially there being no sound money in our society. Everyone in this room has come of age in a society with no sound money. We don't have this asset that they had in past epochs, which allows certain behavior. And we are without it. And so it's a rather foreign concept to nearly everyone in Western society, except for Austrian economists. They think about it all the time, and that's their big spiel. So, great talk, highly recommend it. My talk is essentially the inverse of Huysman's presentation that he made. And I don't have as much time as him, so I'm going to be trying to rush through, but I'm going to be basically talking about the exact opposite, the cultural consequences of sound money. And in this case, reserved internet sound money, which is what I'm calling Bitcoin. So, first of all, we're talking about cultural impact. So what's culture? I apologize that my presentation doesn't look as slick as Neil. That was really nice. Culture is, I got my background, that's about as good as it gets. Culture is how we do things in its most general sense. And it always involves choice. Austrian economics love to talk about that because they include ethics in their economic conception, and they're very concerned with the freedom of individuals to do as they like, as long as it doesn't hurt other people. So, what is sound money? Luckily for me, I get to go over this super fast because we just saw a fantastic presentation about it. It's a special good in the economy. It allows us a universal translator to allow transmitting assets back and forth. You've got the durability, portability, divisibility, fungibility, and scarcity. Fungibility means that one unit is like the other, which, by the way, in Bitcoin, not quite as good as gold. Although it's easier. Yeah, because virgin coin that's just been mined will always have a premium over any Bitcoin that has been exchanged. But that's pretty much it. There's the virgin coin and then all the rest. There's no even worse generally. We might see some of that. So a lot of privacy technology is coming into Bitcoin now to solve that issue. And one important note, oh, hey, I didn't do that. One important note about sound money that we didn't get to, that's important for this talk, is that the market determines whether these criteria are met and a good becomes adopted as money, i.e., it's through voluntary choice, right? So we're talking about how the legal tender laws stipulate that if you owe me money, I gotta accept British pounds. If I say no, I only want Bitcoin or gold, you could go to the cop or you could sue me and say, hey, lock him in a cage because he won't accept my paper pounds. That's stipulated in law, legal tender laws. Sound money is quite the opposite. People choose voluntarily that they like gold or Bitcoin. They want to value it, and they want to accept it, or they want to send it and receive it. So, this is a word I made up, and monetization, right? It's the opposite of demonetization. Some people call it hyper-monetization because Bitcoin is being monetized so quickly. Gold was monetized, as we discussed, when you had necklaces, you had a little blob of it or whatever, and it was like, hey, this stuff's pretty cool. My granddad gave me that. It's in perfect condition. It didn't even tarnish. And then, finally, after thousands of years, people were like, okay, cool. How much gold is my herd of horses worth? Then it, is a unit of account. Bitcoin is rushing through these stages, and it's basically right here. It's just finally sort of leaving. It had an early medium of exchange period that was just kind of pre-anything when it was still wobbly. Now it's a pretty solid store of value, and the technology is still being developed to create a really excellent medium of exchange. You heard us babbling about the Lightning Network. That is one of many solutions to come. And then lastly, of course, the unit of account. What is fiat currency? We already discussed that. Just wanted to mention what the word fiat is actually a synonym for decree. So in other words, this is money, I'm the authority, I have the cops with batons, or I guess nowadays guns here, whatever. And so, edict by the local authority stipulating behavior of occupants, right? That's us. Government and central banks issue scrip. That's the sort of official word for paper currency. The market would otherwise not value. We wouldn't choose to value pieces of paper if there weren't a guy with a gun saying you have to. Wow, so is it...
I've got no idea what's happening now. So.
Okay, I'll use the arrows, maybe that's better. So, of course, as we discussed, currency can be demonetized very, very easily. It's portable, divisible, and fungible, but not scarce, and it doesn't need to be durable because it doesn't need to last. It's not scarce.
It's a good job you've got an old £5 note there.
Exactly. So, moving on to the Austrian economics viewpoint of how government and economy work together or opposing. What is government? Some people don't think about this very much. It's kind of a political philosophy thing. A government is a localized monopoly on coercion. So, in other words, none of us are allowed to punch somebody in the face. But a cop can under certain circumstances, right? Or what do you call him here? Bobby. That's like a 50s term. So basically, if you are also doing violence, then you're a mafia, right? But the head mafia that's actually winning the area is called government. And they have awesome marketing that makes us want them, some of us. Oh yeah, arrows. So the Austrian economics view of government intervention in the market is that it causes changes to individual and collective behavior, both intentional and unintentional. So unintentional behavior changes will be what social theorists call, and economists as well call higher order effects. So a second order effect would be, so first order effect is that you have to accept these pieces of paper. Second order effect is now I need to collect these pieces of paper and put them in a box, right? Third order effect could be the things I'm talking about in this talk, right? So it's various effects. And that's true for law in general. Often lawmakers specifically leave out second and third and fourth and fifth order effects of the laws that they're bringing into existence. Ludwig von Mises, the Austrian economist, describes government intervention as the single command by virtue of which the government orders the citizens to use their property differently than they otherwise would have done so. Cool. Government economic intervention skews choices away from natural market behavior. Now, natural market is a somewhat abstract term, but Austrian economists use it to describe what people do in the absence of somebody coercing them to do something else. And less government intervention means less coercion, and behavior will tend toward natural market incentives. That's pretty clear. So, moving on to some of the cultural consequences of sound money coming back into our culture for the first time in about 100 years. So in a fiat system, because the creation of currency is held with the local authority in a region, anybody close to that money creation point has an advantage. Therefore, it leads to political centralization. The authority becomes more powerful, and power flows to that central point. In a sound money system, it's quite the opposite. Mises said, the economic foundation for the political rule by the people is that the government is financially dependent on the citizens. Well, currently, the government is not dependent on us. They can print as much as they want. Now, of course, there are certain limits that they self-impose because they don't want to cause a revolution overnight, like in Venezuela or Zimbabwe, where they don't have that self-control. But within that, those extremely wide limits, they don't have to depend on us. Over 90% of the U.S. government, I'm not sure what the figure is here, I believe it's about 92% of the United States government budget is through borrowing money from a private banking cabal called the Federal Reserve. Only 8% of the budget comes from taxation. So they don't need to depend on the U.S. citizenry. Her Majesty doesn't need to, depend on British citizenry for the political rule. So budget, the government's budget is how citizenry prevents government from becoming too powerful and tyrannical. So we have a situation right now where we have tyrannical governments around the world. Whether you want to accept it or not, We live in a police state, an authoritarian police state. There's mass surveillance happening on digital devices, but even surveillance has been happening, long before we all had cell phones. It's far worse now. But this is maybe you might consider this a subjective notion, but think about it. In the case of fiat money, a government has no limit, like I said, on the amount of debt that it can take out. It can borrow as much from the Bank of England or the Federal Reserve as it wants. And nobody will force them to pay it back because they're both benefiting from that situation by being at the center of the currency creation. A sound money economy, on the other hand, means government cannot issue endless debt because sound money is scarce. You've got to work to get it. So you can't just issue it. So the result of that, in a sound money system, we will be having, and I believe we actually already are having for various reasons, waning government power. Currently, we have government by an elite for an elite. As Bitcoin takes hold in our society, you will see more movement toward government by the people and for the people, as the U.S. Constitution stipulates. We're going to see waning government power. So you might want to reconsider, as the years flow on, the ability to, be litigious might be reduced over time. So keep it in mind. Government power will be strictly limited. You won't be able to have 92% of your budget be debt because nobody will accept that. At a certain point, these fake monies, these fiat currencies, will hyperinflate, or will do what they call hyper-Bitcoinize, which is when Bitcoin's value is rushing up so much that everyone takes out as much debt that they can, which can be created out of nothing, remember, and that causes a huge imbalance and a rush of speculative attacks against fiat currencies. Even the strongest ones, like the Swiss franc, for example, can be subject to such an attack. The power of the individual increasing. So that individuals functioning in society in the market will be taking up that power that has flowed away into the government. So in a fiat system, the absolute size of your citizenry and your economic region, so the absolute size of a government's country and this absolute size of its economy determines how much power it has. So large countries currently have a huge advantage over small countries. But that's starting to change with the internet, and with sound money, smaller and more nimble governments will outcompete lumbering, huge governments which have massive bureaucracy, making them incredibly inefficient and unable to compete in a market. Because once again, governments are like big mafias with great marketing. But if they don't have if they have a limited budget, then they'll need to compete with other jurisdictions, and ever more so with free information flow. One of the favorite hobbies of governments who have unlimited budgets, warfare. The power brokers inside of governments have the connections to profit from the misery and destruction that warfare causes. In every single way, all those different order effects, but even starting from the simple things like weaponry and defensive technologies. So in a sound money system, however, your war better be short and small or you'll never be able to pay for it. I think we're going to be seeing diminishing warfare in a sound money culture. Welfare is another important aspect of the marketing of governments. Even though Austrian economists are very steadfast in their belief that having handouts, as they call them, and what's the other fun word? Entitlements, right? They consider the higher order effects of such things to be negative and depressing on an economy, and also, once again, taking power away from the people and making them dependent on government. So of course, those programs as well have a great reliance on the ability to create debt. So in a sound money system, however, it will be more and more difficult to extract taxation from citizenry, as the gentleman, I believe, in the back was pointing out, because you'll have to pay them with sound money, which you'll have to work for and earn. So you can maybe enforce some taxation in your area, but certainly not as much as you can now. If you can pay them with money that's created out of thin air, you can enforce anything you want. But in a sound money system, there will be strict limits on government. And so welfare programs will need to have an overwhelming mandate from the citizenry. They'll have to agree, I'm going to pay this. Plus, the internet, people being extremely mobile, you'll be able to do what they call jurisdictional arbitrage, which means I don't like this country, I don't like the US. Last time I drove up the border in San Diego, those guys were assholes to me, they searched my shit. What the hell, I'm a citizen here, so fuck you, I'm taking my tax dollars to the UK, right? The support bureaucracy and apparatus around welfare is perhaps 10 or 50 times as big as the government side. That's an apparatus that Austrian economists feel is drawing off productivity and wealth from society that could be used for more productive activities. And so that will also be flushed away in the sound money system. Let's talk about the economic processes of the fiat economy for a second. Let's find my note here. Yes. In a fiat economy, governments don't have very much limit on how much money they can create. So the general tendency is for either lower deflation or higher inflation. They're basically the same thing. You're moving toward the money being worth less and prices going up all the time. So what that means is that the government and banking system try to prevent hoarding because they want you to spend and not be able to build wealth. They devalue the money. They used to call that clipping, where they would take off a tiny piece of silver every time it came through the central bank. Once again, fiat debt creation is analogous to taxation on the citizenry because you're devaluing everybody's money at the same time. It's sort of an additional taxation or an alternate method of taxation that's easier to get away with because you don't see it as much. It's just like, oh, my purchasing power went down another 2% every year. In a sound money economy, we have a totally different situation. Deflationary growth. Now this is a term which you don't hear a lot in modern economics because they don't want you to know about it. But in the UK and Europe, from about the end of the Napoleonic Wars to the beginning of World War I, we had a situation of deflationary growth. Deflation is when the money becomes worth more and the prices deflate. The prices go down because your money is worth more today than it was yesterday. So what that does, in our current society, you're incentivized to spend because your pound will be worth less tomorrow than it's worth today. So you got to spend and get something for it now before it loses its value. And of course, that is more noticeable in next year. But if you're a company and you're like, we could buy this truck next year, but our pounds will only go 97% as far, so we should get it now. We should get rid of all of our horrible pounds. Everyone wants to get rid of their horrible, worthless paper shite. But in a deflationary growth sound money economy, there's a strong incentive to build savings because you hold them. This is the Bitcoin meme that's developed around holding your Bitcoin. Now, Bitcoin, of course, is in a hyper-monetization stage. Once it reaches the top, people say exponential, but there's another mathematic term that really describes it. It's this sort of sine wave thing, where you go up the S, it's an adoption curve. Is where
S curve.
Yeah, it's the S curve adoption, but there's a mathematical word for what that is. Say again?
Parabolic.
No, that's parabola is like this. But anyways, it's an S curve. There's hardly anybody knows about Bitcoin, and whoa, we're here. We're like, holy shit, everyone's finding out about Bitcoin. And then it will rise and jaggedly up this S curve very steeply, and then eventually everybody will have Bitcoin, and it'll be the reserve internet sound money. So then the value of it will steady at the top of the S curve. That's where we're going to see the deflationary growth. Quick question?
Yeah, I think the graph that you're on about, there's a logarithmic graph.
Exactly. Logarithmic is really the move of Bitcoin.
Where it's going to kind of tail off, as you said, like that.
Right.
As it reaches its top value.
Right, but it won't be a top value because deflationary growth, still, the sound money will tend, if it's universally used, approximately universally used, sound money will tend to appreciate at the same rate as the economy grows. Now, grows is a word that's used now in a very fucked up way. They fudge all the numbers. GDP, that's all nonsense. If you have a sound money and you're like, if you take a big basket of goods and you compare it to the previous year, that happened with gold from 1815 to 1914. If you had a big holding of gold in 1820 and you went it back out in 1870, you'd be able to buy, 7 railroads instead of 1. So there's going to be a percent at the top of that S curve where it's just going to keep going up. But it'll be a more steady rate, and it'll be reflective of how much wealth the economy is building every year, because we're all putting labor into it in a productive way. And we're communicating with each other and creating wealth. That's actually how the economy works. It's not a zero-sum game. We're making more wealth every day. However, it's being drawn off by those next to the creation point of today's currency. I have a feeling that the economy won't be growing at 2 or 3 or 4% when that happens, because we have the internet and we'll have sound money and we'll be able to move things this super fast. I think we're going to see high single-digit, maybe even double-digit appreciation of Bitcoin at the top of the curve for the foreseeable future. So huge wealth creations is up there. So currently, YOLO is today's, right? Today, that's the fiat version. Our savings, from our great-grandparents, we say today. They still had that ethic during the Depression from the 19th century, of course, because the cultural ethics developed because you wanted to save and be prudent, right? Because, geez, you got killer results, hold your gold, boom, spend way more money. We're going to move back toward that. Bitcoiners already see that. If you're holding your Bitcoin, obviously it's much more extreme now, but I mean, geez, even if your money's only going up 10 or 20 or 40% a year, that's like, God, I'm gonna eat some sausage rolls today, no ribeye. So, and Bitcoiners are known for being extremely, what you might call stingy or Mr. Buzzkill, But this is not a YOLO situation if you're so rewarded from holding sound money. So savings will be encouraged in our society. People will be more prudent in an economic sense. So I already explained how sound money gains value and it tracks the wealth-producing activity in the market, while fiat currency does not. Diving a little deeper into wealth creation, those are some Austrian gold and silver coins, some Philharmonica. People and institutions, of course, are incentivized to build wealth and savings. Just like in a fiat situation, people and institutions are incentivized to take on debt. Everyone's in our society right now is incentivized to take on debt because you can leverage your investments, right? I have this much, you're going to give me another mortgage? Cool, I'll be able to buy this other property or invest in a business that's going to beat the inflation rate. So you want to take out as much debt as you can. That's why Trump talks about that. He comes from business. He's like, I love debt. It enables me to do X, Y, and Z, right? So everyone's incentivized to take on debt. What that means is that the economy becomes fragile. That's our current situation, right? 2008, chain reaction. That's because debt is created from nothing and therefore it can be destroyed. All you have to say is, I'm not paying you back. and the other guy doesn't have guns, so I've just absolved your debt. Our currency is actually based on debt. It's the government borrowing from a bank, right? Here's your currency that you can use in your society. And so what that means is they have to pay interest on it, and it also is not based on scarcity, and so it can evaporate. Now, of course, that's deflationary, which is not a bad thing per se for everyone, but certainly if you gave that loan out, you're not happy. And loans, well, let's move on here. So in a sound money system, it's quite the opposite. Everyone, groups of people, governments, institutions, they're incentivized to build savings. You're so rewarded for saving sound money. Instead of having a fragile economy, you have an anti-fragile economy. This is a term from Nicholas Nassim Taleb. It's different from robust. Anti-fragile means that you benefit from attacks. It's like the old saying, right? Anything that doesn't kill me makes me stronger. An anti-fragile economy benefits from attacks that don't completely destroy it. Anything that allows it to survive, boom, the immune system takes over and the system becomes far stronger. Bitcoin is a classic example. It's been attacked. You're asking me about Bcash. It's just another attack. It's going to make Bitcoin that much stronger. Because of the cushion afforded by everyone holding a bit of extra money and getting rewarded for it and being incentivized to hold it, you can withstand shocks and disruptions a lot better. So, in a fiat economy, you have fixed interest rates. The central banks set the interest rates, not the market. What that means is that that's because they want the governments to have to pay less tomorrow than they pay today on their debt. So they're incentivized to take out more debt. Everyone's incentivized to take out more debt because it's going to cost you less tomorrow to pay back than it does today. If your interest rate is below the inflation rate, which of course governments get that. We don't, but governments get that, right? So everyone's incentivized to take on as much debt as it can because it'll be cheaper tomorrow to pay it off than today. Well, in sound money systems, I think we're going to see a lot less available to take out on credit because tomorrow you're going to have to pay back a lot more in purchasing power than you do today. Because if I borrow a Bitcoin from you today and you want to be paid back 6 months from now and you want 1 Bitcoin back, how's that going to work out for me? Probably not too good. But maybe just for a few months in 2014 it would have worked out fine, but not great. So what happens is somebody who wants to make some money from their savings, their investment has to beat the deflation rate. So like we were saying, if Bitcoin is appreciating at the top of the S-curve 8% a year, and you come to me with a business proposal, and your proposal has a projection for a 6% profit a year, well, I think to myself, I'm going to lose 2% as compared to just keeping my Bitcoin in a cold wallet and not doing shit. I don't even have to read your damn business plan and I make 2% on that deal. I'm not investing in it. So the minimum bar for investment goes up. And Keynesians, which is sort of might be considered the opposite of Austrian economics, they say, that's terrible. Nobody will have any money for their businesses and the economy will grind to a halt. Austrian economists say, wait, did you hear about that startup for balloon animal digital, what was that thing? They already tanked and now you're putting another 10 million in this thing for glasses with a piece of Play-Doh on it? What are you investing in? Malinvestment is endemic in our society because everyone's desperate to get rid of their shit currency. Loans in a sound money system have to beat the deflation rate in order to even make the minimum bar. Let's see here. Can I look at the other page here? This is awesome. It's my first time using this. This is cool. Is it going to switch it if I... Oh, whatever. Let me skip forward. Yeah, I'll get to that. Okay, cool. So of course the interest rate, since the market will set it. The market will set the interest rate, so it'll be whatever 10%, say 8%, something like that, and that will be the standard. Or it'll be zero, it'll be negative, right? It'll be negative 8%. Like I loan you 10 bitcoins this year. You only have to pay me 9.2 next year because I know it's going to be worth more, and everyone's cool. Or you have to pay me 10. So it's you have to pay me the full value, so you're going to be losing 8% on that probably, or whatever it is. So we'll have a natural. Say again?
Not this week.
Yeah, exactly. That's why, don't do this until the top of the S curve. But the market interest rate means that credit service, the economy will move in a much more efficient manner because the supply will match with demand for loan and credit. So this is what I just described. The investments which promise to be overall economic growth are attractive. Funding and losing propositions, or even propositions that can't just be, steady state. They have to add something to the economy for you to invest in them. And sound money, of course, also reduces the demand for credit. So I was just talking about supply. Like, I'm not going to lend you that. Your idea's not right enough. Sound money reduces the demand as well. So financial markets take up less economic volume. We have an extreme financialization of our economy. The volume of financial services in our economy is some ungodly percentage, like 25, some huge number. And the amount of service and value that the wider economy gets from these services can be debatable, you could say. The fiat economy encourages short-term perspective and haste. If you can have a long-term perspective in a fiat economy, you're going to make really interesting decisions. But it's very difficult because you're constantly trying to get rid of this poor quality currency. And we're going to see quite the opposite in the sound money culture. People are going to have more patience on an economic level. They're going to have more of a long-term perspective. Well, like I said, I think ribeyes are very healthy, actually. So maybe I'll just get a rump steak and not a ribeye, and I'll be able to buy more ribeyes in 2019. Let's see, where are we? Oh, yeah, great. So because of that, you don't need to be as concerned about your personal wealth in a sound money system because you're not constantly being stolen from by central banks. I think we're going to see an increasing focus on personal development and even the spirituality, the resurgence of spirituality, because people will have more time and ability to do it just because society will be wealthier, first of all. But even on an economic basis, it will be, you'll be incentivized to do that anyways because you won't need to think about how to manage your wealth. Okay, I'm cool, my wealth's growing at 7%, I don't need to worry about that. Even if you're poor, you'll have access to that. Just like you could buy one silver coin, in 1850 and just be like, okay, this is cool because I know that next year it's going to be worth a little more. And in addition, in a fiat economy, if you get wiped out, it's really tough to get back on the horse. If you, that's why, I passed a woman on the street today, here in Newcastle, that was homeless, and she was doing a crossword. I was helping her with the crossword. I gave her a pound. I mean, it's awful. If you drop below that point in the States, it's a really terrible thing. There's even worse services there, right, from the government. And I know a lot of people in Los Angeles who were very close to being, have been very close to being, homeless over the last 10 years since this depression that we're in hit. In a sound money system, it's a lot easier to bounce back. All you got to do is earn some more sound money, sock it away, and you're back on track, and you're wealthier the next year after that. It's much easier to rebound. Once again, society in general is anti-fragile. And so we have in the fiat system, we have a feeling of lack because there's always this, prices are always more than they were last year, and my money is always worth less, and I can always buy less, and my savings are always being eaten away. It's a feeling of scarcity. I think we're going to have more of a feeling of abundance and fullness just on a general emotional level in a sound money economy. I know it sounds kind of crazy, but really extrapolating from the incentives in the economy and the sound money system, we're going to see a lot more of a full emotional color in the West, or in whatever societies take on Bitcoin as a reserve money. Here's another interesting side effect. I love this. You know how those buildings from the 19th century are super gorgeous and they're all built really awesome and they don't fucking break down all the time? I mean, in Vienna, I used to live in Vienna, I studied music there. They have Altbau and Neubau. Neubau is the shitty buildings that were built in the 50s after all those blocks got bombed out. Altbau is the killer, Belle Epoque, super solid stone with these massive 12-foot ceilings and these giant apartments. Like, they were so awesome. You gotta have an Altbau apartment in Vienna. Well, how did they have all this money to like make gargoyles and paint cool stuff on there? It's just an apartment building, right? Well, what happens, one of the side effects of your money becoming more valuable year after year is that today's investments aren't going to pay you as much as last year's investments. You're not as incentivized to invest, right? Because, wow, 3 years ago I bought some Bitcoin and that's up 50x. But if I buy some today, can we go 50x from here? Maybe, but that's a pretty tall order. That's $1 million, right? Whoa, geez. Maybe I'll just, spend it on something else. And so what happens is you're not incentivized to make a profit on your investments per se. If you have that extra money, maybe you'll invest in something that gives you an emotional return, or fulfills you in a different way, or makes something beautiful that you can be proud of.
Like Dogecoin.
Invest in Dogecoin. No, that's these giant charities and investments or trusts and things that were set up. Somebody loved music, but he was an industrialist in the 1880s, say, and he set up a trust with tons of gold. And every year it's worth more, and they sell off a tiny bit, and they're paying for scholarships for young viola players, right? You might, you might do your investment on a personal project. Get a bunch of cool paints or gold leaf or whatever you're doing. So there's going to be more of these passion projects in society. I think that we're going to see more beauty every day than we do now. There's a reason why brutalist architecture happened at the height of authoritarianism in the 20th century. That's the architecture. So in a fiat system, you're very reliant on other people not to fuck you over. Because if they vote for the bastards that like to print lots of money, then your wealth is going to be attacked. So everyone is incentivized to be really nosy and to care about how you're gonna vote, and to promote your idea so that your self-interest isn't harmed. Keynesians love to say, well, it's great. It keeps society cohesive and keeps us all caring about one another. But of course, the motivation is self-interest. I want to prevent you from fucking me over because I fear what you will do, because there's so much power at the top that anybody who has levers to pull to influence it and affect my life, I really got to be involved. So everyone's really worried about everybody else. Worried being the operative term. They're fearful. In a sound money system, I think we're going to see a lot more self-reliance. And I think that's why the classic American, rugged individualist meme came about in the 18th and 19th centuries, because these guys, Europeans, went over there and they had sound money, and they created a homestead, they created a bunch of stuff, and they built stuff. And they were out there in the element, and there was this kind of rugged individualist thing. That has been completely hollowed out by the 20th century and the height authoritarianism once again. So I think we're going to see a return, certainly in the States, to their, I would assume on a cultural level, they're going to be taking that sort of mantle up again. But in general, I think sound money economies induce people to be more self-reliant, more independent, but yet the additional wealth and also the confidence that an independent and self-reliant mindset brings means that we'll probably be more concerned with others from a point of caring and love rather than fear and worry. So, being worried about how other people vote is an increased politicization. That's why in the States, especially here, I think Brits are a little bit what you might call jaded or aloof about politics because the British pound is not the reserve currency of the world, right? So the Bank of England didn't have the ability to paper over all of the crimes that the Federal Reserve did. So I think the Brits are a little bit more cynical and savvy on this. But in the States, everyone's just kind of realizing what's going on. And also, it's easier to control a populace if they're at each other's throats. So the politicization there is insane right now, especially with Trump, right, who's kind of an outsider candidate. And, there's a massive politicization and huge amount of conflict on a political level there. And everyone's broke. Everyone's pissed off. Everyone's worse off than they were last year than they are this year. Or other way around. So I think we're going to see decreased politicization. And governments won't be as powerful, so you won't be as incentivized to care about politics quite as much because they don't. My neighbors have more power than those jackasses or whatever. And I think we're going to see, less need to apply pressure to the political process to control other people rather than, kind of finding consensus. I think it's going to be a little bit easier to find laws that people agree on because it will be a more smooth process. People will be able to support each other with their wealth creation activities. So, in Austrian economics and sociology, they have a term called collective corruption. Nobody has an incentive or an interest to abolish fiat money and replace it with sound money because we all benefit, before Bitcoin that is, of course, we all benefit from being able to take out lots of debt. We don't really want to change that because on the short-term basis, money is easy, right? Money's cheap, debt is cheap, interest rates are low. We're able to take out more and more and more debt. Of course, that creates incredible endemic risk, right? And so you have a situation, once again, where the economy is extremely fragile, and we have this disconnect between what each individual wants and what's good for the collective, right? That is called the rationality trap. The individual incentive is at odds with the collective good, and it's a typical consequence of government intervention. So, in a sound money system, I like to call it collective ethics. Instead of a corruption where everybody wants this thing in the short term that's bad for everyone as a whole. Instead, we all want something that's good for everyone as a whole, sound money. Honest actors are incentivized to keep sound money paradigm, right? And anybody who's against sound money, it's really easy to recognize that they're crooks. They recognized it in 1913 when the Federal Reserve was setting up. There's a great classic cartoon. That's what I actually put in here. But I was most focusing on the positive stuff. But there's this octopus has its tentacles in the different institutions, and it's sucking out all the money, and it's barfing all the coins into the stock market, right? And that's exactly what we have today, where the money that's being created by the Federal Reserve is pumped into these investments. In the long run, everyone stands to gain material as sound money system flourishes. Now, of course, bad actors are not included in that, but even they will benefit more, than they would if they weren't next to the money creation source. And so, the opposite of the rationality trap, in my opinion, is rational self-interest. You're self-interested but not at the expense of others in a sound money system. Individual and collective incentives are aligned. And that's a typical consequence of free market behavior because it's voluntary. People choose to interact with each other. And make no mistake, when you buy something at the store or when you barter, you're both better off. It's a synergistic relationship where both sides benefit. Once again, it's not zero sum. I already mentioned that. Political systems going to be a little bit consensus, possibly a little bit easier to come up with systems that benefit all parties. So here's where I get a little bit even more hypothetical as you may think that my predictions already are. Here's some more for you. Yes?
2 minutes.
Okay, perfect. I think we're going to see jurisdictional dissolution, decentralized governments. In other words, smaller, right? So there will be Jordyland, Sunderland. I think we're going to see a return to city-states. Might take 50 years, but I think we're going to start seeing regions have more autonomy, and then we're going to see cities have more autonomy, and borders become maybe more porous in a certain way, but then certain areas they don't want anybody in there. There will be more autonomy, in my opinion. I think we're going to see wealth permeating society. We're going to see incredible things as early as the 2020s. I think it's going to take a few years. We've got to get up that S-curve a bit more, but as Bitcoin use increases, the benefits of sound money are going to benefit people, even who don't hold it, because there's going to be so much more wealth around. This is where this picture comes in a little bit. I think we're going to see wealth being associated with achievement, like it used to be, rather than fraud. I mean, it's embarrassing to be rich now because everyone knows instinctively, even if not consciously, that it's unethical to be close to the creation of fake money. But it'll be much more difficult. It'll be more, not more difficult. It'll be more meritocratic, so to speak. It'll be based on your hard work and your talents, how wealthy you are, rather than your nepotism. And so I think that signs of wealth will be more widely admired rather than disdained or resented. I think we're going to maybe, depending on the security, so if people aren't just putting guns to each other's heads and lasers or whatever and giving you Bitcoin now, I think we're going to see some interesting fashions. Probably not like that, but maybe some expensive. Oh, I got the new nano fiber and it's real flashy, and people will be like, "Cool, that guy's flossing," And it won't be as shameful with Jared Leto driving around in a beat up 93 Toyota, which he genuinely does. Natural market culture. What that incentive alignment creates on a general level is peace, right? You can't fund warfare as easily. Harmony and symbiosis, mutual respect, self-reliance, beauty we discussed. Automation, people are afraid, I'm going to lose my job. But it's like, wait, those robots are creating incredible amounts of wealth. And your goods cost nearly nothing. And so we're going to see tons of automation, but it's going to create wealth rather than destroying jobs and with nothing to do. People will find other ways to contribute to the society. For example, with AI, you won't have to create a bunch of tedious forms. You'll be able to be more creative in your pursuits. We're going to see more science versus scientism because there will be less public money in the research space. We have a lot of fake science now. Most scientific papers are fraudulent today. We're going to see real advances and much quicker than we're used to, so get used to it, because we're adults, it's going to be hard. Kids won't have it. I think there's going to be, running out of time, conservation versus progress. This is the classic political fight that we talk about today. I think things are going to turn 90 degrees, and we're going to have an interesting combination of conservation and progress. Certain things we're going to want to keep. We want to keep local customs. I think we're going to return some awesome Newcastle, amazing customs, and that's going to be really popular because there will be tons of pride in regions, but not at the expense of other people. But then everyone will be really interested in the latest gadgets, the latest advances, the latest things that we can help, the latest apps, the latest anything. So in that case, will be for progress. And also, we'll want to help each other a lot. And so that can be seen as progressive today, even though it's not at the point of a gun. And check out this term, holacracy. on Wikipedia. It's kind of a combination of network and hierarchy. We have limited hierarchies, small ones. Now we have a giant hierarchy that we live in, right? Smaller hierarchies, like businesses are an example of a hierarchy. I hired you, you've got to do what I say or you're fired, right? But then you can leave, and these companies work with each other in a network. So it's a combination of hierarchies and networks. It's a good concept for the future. So, I didn't actually write my Twitter name on here, but this is a wonderful painting by Daniel Krawas, an old school Bitcoiner who writes wonderful articles. He's also an excellent painter. And he says, oh, I wish I had spent more time on that painting, but I love it. So Bitcoin is the reserve internet sound money of the present. And thank you very much. Questions?
Yeah, I've got 2 or 3 questions.
Okay. Yes.
One question about in the future, you talked about the world where it might be more peaceful place, which I think is a great thing. There's fighting and theory that is possible. Obviously, one of the things that we have today is you have a bank where you store your money and your wealth. People don't tend to hoard a lot of cash. They don't tend to hoard a lot of gold and silver. In the future, obviously, assuming Bitcoin and so on does very well, people are going to have their private keys, whether it be in the head, whether it be for a treasure or whatever. Will that not make individuals more of a target? Because people will be able to extort them in such a way to get money out of that individual, and if so, what's the solution to that?
I've actually written some blog posts that relate to this topic. On my blog, it's called Future Rant, futurerant.tumblr.com. And that's also the name of my show on World Crypto Network. I talk about defensive technology being incentivized in a free market system. So, they didn't have a whole lot back in the day, but you might wear your leather out, in the 19th century. You got your sword cane for your offense side. You might wear your leather tunic instead of wool to protect yourself if you're a wealthy gentleman, just in case. Certainly before that, you would wear leather armor if you were out on the road, and you'd be armed. So I think we're going to see defensive technology highly, highly incentivized. Right now, it's starting to come in now, actually. You see these Kevlar shirts that looks like cotton or polyester, but actually it's bulletproof. We're seeing some amazing technologies, and I think that's going to happen on a huge scale because the technology is going to move so fast, and offensive technology is much more incentivized under a centralized system. So that's my answer for that. Is I think you're going to see incredible types of armor, and it will be actually quite difficult to get one off on somebody. That relates to ubiquitous surveillance as well, where it's a decentralized form of surveillance where, everyone there's just so many cameras floating everywhere, and everyone's got them all over their body that, it'd be pretty tough to get one over on somebody who's all armored up and then, but if not, if you can't, then you're probably going to want to maybe dress down then. Then you wouldn't dress flashy if you can't do that. Good question. Yes?
So it all sounded quite utopian, and I think it applies to the crypto market in general as opposed to just Bitcoin. The question I've got is whether, how do you propose to sort out equality? Because at the moment you've got a lot of people that were in Bitcoin early who have a lot of Bitcoin, but now people are struggling to get even one Bitcoin. So obviously there's going to be a shift of power from fiat currency today to Bitcoin, but are you going to end up in the same situation where you've got 4%?
Right. Perfect question, because this is because we didn't do the resources page at the last one, so we can go now, right? So this relates to an excellent book from exactly 20 years ago called The Sovereign Individual. And what the authors of this book posit is that there will be a general division of overclass and underclass as the century moves forward. And right now we have tinily, 830 people or whatever own trillions and trillions and trillions, and everybody else has the scraps. I think what we're going to see is that scale move way down. And say, maybe a few tens of millions of people will be these sort of tech elite, and then other people will. I think that poverty will be far less. So it won't the other 7 billion or whatever. They'll find it much easier to find shelter, clean water, and food. But to get to that next level might be a big gap, and that's because of this meritocratic idea, right? Where in a sound money system, you can't depend on fraud or nepotism to grow your wealth. You have to do it through hard work and intelligence, innate qualities as well as labor. So equality is something that is a sort of buzzword, right? That we have in the current system as a marketing ploy for governments to gain the conscious mandate of the masses to try to alleviate some of the visible forms of wealth and horrible, scathing poverty. And I think what we're going to see is more of a focus on, once again, collective ethics. And so it'll be much more important to have a fair society than an egalitarian or equal society. And I think a lot of people, when they think about that, they tend to agree. It's like, well, yeah, I mean, if you earned that money, you do deserve it. And so it's the same thing. It's like, well, you didn't take like, for example, but Bitcoiners tell everyone they know about Bitcoin, right? But only a tiny fraction actually put the time in to research and understand what it is, understand why it's important, why it's a great investment, and then put the skin in the game and put their hard-earned wealth or labor to buy or earn Bitcoin. And then put in the labor to secure the Bitcoin, and then, it goes on and on. So that's a reward for actual, for being conscientious and spending the time. Early Bitcoiners deserve that. And maybe it's a really astronomical amount of wealth they get. I think that's going to change society in totally strange and unpredictable ways, because we have a number of libertarians and anarchists who will be the new ultra wealthy. That's going to be, they're going to have completely different values, and they'll fund things that never get money today, like open source software and things. So that'd be very interesting.
Great, I'm sorry,
Yes.
I just
Is that
want to give Lewis some respect.
Fantastic.
For doing it all.
I'd love to talk to you guys after.
Thanks very much.